The 1st of September 1939. Nazi Germany invades Poland, and the German army is followed by the Einsatzgruppen, which are Nazi mobile death squads sent to Poland to kill the civilians. Mostly the Polish intelligentsia, such as teachers, priests, physicians, and other prominent members of Polish society. After the German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, these paramilitary death squads, working with units of the German armed forces and local collaborators, will conduct mass shooting operations, targeting mostly Jews, Romani, Soviet officials, and other people with disabilities. From 1941 to 1945, while operating behind the front line in Nazi-occupied Eastern Europe, the Einsatzgruppen will murder around 2 million innocent men, women, and children, accounting for 1/3 of all Jewish Holocaust victims. One of the main perpetrators of these atrocities is Otto Ohlendorf. Otto Ohlendorf was born on the 4th of February 1907 in Hoheneggelsen, then part of the German Empire. A cultured academic who had earned degrees in economics and law, Ohlendorf joined the Nazi Party in 1925, and in 1926 he joined the SS, thus becoming one of its first members. In 1936, 3 years after Hitler and the Nazi Party came into power, Otto Ohlendorf joined the SD, which was the intelligence agency of the Nazi Party and was considered a sister organization with the Gestapo, which was the official secret police of Nazi Germany. Over the course of the Nazi era, the SD took an increasingly prominent role in the Nazi anti-Jewish policies, and Ohlendorf became an economic consultant of this elite Nazi Party paramilitary organization that was under Heinrich Himmler's control. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Shortly after, Heinrich Himmler established a new agency, Reich Security Main Office, which formalized the relationship between the intelligence service, the SD, and the security police, which consisted of the Gestapo and the Kripo, which was a criminal police. This new agency, led by Himmler's deputy, Reinhard Heydrich, was an ideologically radical and brutal institution responsible for coordinating and perpetrating many aspects of the Holocaust. The Reich Security Main Office had 7 officers, and Otto Ohlendorf was appointed the head of the SD's inland section. His role was to collect intelligence from his secret police agents and scientifically examine social, cultural, and economic issues, assembling reports to his superiors in the Nazi government. These reports consisted of routine public opinion surveys, which attempted to inform the state leadership about the current mood among the population. On Sunday, the 22nd of June, 1941, started Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union. The 3,000 personnel of 4 Einsatzgruppen were sent to the Eastern Front, and Reinhard Heydrich appointed Ohlendorf the commander of the Einsatzgruppe D. Heydrich appreciated young men like Ohlendorf, who were educated and had a strong ideological commitment to National Socialism, and many Einsatzgruppe leaders were highly educated men. Ohlendorf's Einsatzgruppe D was attached directly to the 11th Army and operated in southern Ukraine and Crimea. His unit consisted of about 500 men and was supplemented by Romanians and Ukrainians. Their objective was to kill the Jews and Gypsies, as well as the Soviet political commissars. Some of the men whom Ohlendorf did not consider emotionally suitable for executing these tasks were excluded and sent home. According to Ohlendorf's post-war testimony, in late summer 1941, Himmler assembled the leaders of the men of the Einsatzkommandos and repeated to them the order to kill all the reported Jews and Romani, as well as the Soviet political commissars, and pointed out that neither the leaders nor the men who were taking part in the liquidation bore any personal responsibility for the execution of this order. The responsibility was his and the Führer's alone. Ohlendorf himself was present at the mass executions on his own initiative for the purpose of inspection, to determine whether or not his instructions regarding the manner of execution were actually carried out. The executions were carefully planned and conducted accordingly. With the help of local collaborators, the Einsatzkommando attempted to collect all the Jews in the area by registering them. They were rounded up on the pretext that they were to be resettled. This registration was performed by the Jews themselves, and after the registration of the Jews was completed, they were collected at one place. Gold, silver, and other valuables were confiscated at the time of the registration or the rounding up and handed over to the Finance Ministry, either through the Reich Security Main Office or directly. At the request of the army, watchers were made available to the forces at the front. Ohlendorf instructed his men not to take any of the victims' valuables. The victims were then transported in trucks to the place of execution. Ohlendorf's idea was that only as many as could be executed immediately were transported, and the span of time from the moment in which the victims knew what was about to happen to them until the time of their actual execution was kept as short as possible. Immediately before the execution, the victims were also obliged to take off their outer garments. In contrast to some of the other Einsatzgruppen commanders, Ohlendorf ordered that several of his men should shoot the victims at the same time, thus avoiding direct personal responsibility. The victims were shot in a standing or kneeling position by firing squads under command, and the bodies were buried in the anti-tank ditch or excavation. The commandos then filled the graves to efface the signs of execution, and then labor units of the population leveled them. At first, the victims' clothing was given to the population, but in the winter of 1941 to 1942, it was collected and disposed of. Otto Ohlendorf was against shooting the victims in the back of the neck, because as he later claimed for both the victims and for those who carried out the executions, it was psychologically an immense burden to bear. Executions carried out in this manner could cause, according to Ohlendorf's words, excitement and disobedience among the victims, and the commandos would be forced to restore order by means of violence, such as beating. Up until the spring of 1942, the executions of men, women, and children were carried out in a military manner by firing squads under command. In the spring of 1942, an order came from Himmler that in the future women and children were to be killed only in gas vans. The reason was that the members of the killing commandos, mostly married men, should not be compelled to aim their guns at women and children. The actual purpose of these vans could not be seen from the outside. The vans were loaded with the victims on the pretext that they were to be transported to another locality. Instead, they were driven to the place of burial, which was usually the same as that used for the mass executions. The time needed for transportation was sufficient to ensure the death of the people inside the van. The vans looked like closed trucks and were constructed in a way that at the start of the motor, engines pumped carbon monoxide into sealed passenger compartments, causing death in 10 to 15 minutes. Depending on the size of the van, about 15 to 25 persons could be killed simultaneously. However, members of the execution squad preferred killing women and children by shooting as opposed to killing in the gas vans, because as Ohlendorf later claimed, the unloading of the corpses was an unnecessary mental strain for the men, because certain functions of the body had taken place, leaving the corpses lying in filth, and the vans had been dirtied as well. This was in sharp contrast to his later claim that the people killed in gas vans were not conscious of what was happening to them. Later, when Ohlendorf was asked why the children had been massacred, he replied that the order was that the Jewish population should be totally exterminated, and in the child, they saw the grown-up. Einsatzgruppe D, of which Ohlendorf was a commander, was in particular responsible for the massacre at Simferopol between the 9th and 13th of December 1941, where at least 14,000 people, mostly Jews, were killed. In the year between June 1941 and June 1942, the Einsatzkommando D, under Ohlendorf's command, reported 90,000 people liquidated, most of them Jewish men, women and children. After the death of Reinhard Heydrich in June 1942, Otto Ohlendorf returned to the Reich Ministry of Economic Affairs and became a Deputy Director General. Even when it was obvious that the war was lost, Ohlendorf, a loyal Nazi, believed that some form of Nazism would ultimately survive, and he could shape the post-war reconstruction of Germany, but along National Socialist lines. However, he was wrong. Otto Ohlendorf was arrested in May 1945 together with his chief, Heinrich Himmler. Unlike Himmler, who committed suicide by biting into a hidden cyanide ampule on the 23rd of May 1945, Ohlendorf was carefully interrogated for several weeks, during which he revealed the criminal nature of the German campaign in the East. He was then finally to face justice and pay for his crimes. While in January 1946, he was called as a witness by the prosecution during the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, during the subsequent Einsatzgruppen Trial, which started on the 29th of September 1947. Otto Ohlendorf was the main defendant. He expressed no remorse for his actions, and openly and unabashedly admitted to his murderous crimes. To justify his actions, he defended killing innocent people as a necessary task to secure Lebensraum, meaning living space, for the German Reich in the East, which Hitler believed that Germany needed in order to harvest more food to allow the German population to grow at a faster rate. Ohlendorf admitted to having scruples in regard to the execution of killing orders, but he added that he had carried them out anyway because he found it inconceivable that a subordinate leader should not carry out orders given by the leaders of the state. Ohlendorf said that he had never questioned the legality of the orders because he had sworn obedience to the people who had issued them. He added that he had surrendered his moral conscience to the fact that he was a soldier, and therefore a cog in a relatively low position of a great machine. He asserted that history would regard his firing squads as no worse than the press-button killers who had dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. Furthermore, Ohlendorf considered killing the innocent people neither an atrocity nor a brutality because the murdered Jews were stood up, lined up, and shot in true military fashion. He added that the bombing of German cities by the Allies was at least as bad as the shooting of those Jews. When he was asked if his men appointed to execute the killing orders had ever asked him to be relieved of such tasks, he replied that he could not remember any such case, and added that even if they had done so, the result would have been a court-martial, with a corresponding sentence, which would be death. Even though the Nazi commanding generals claimed that they knew nothing of the atrocities committed by the Einsatzgruppen, Otto Ohlendorf confirmed that they had been similarly informed of the orders for the liquidation of the Jews and Soviet functionaries. He added that without such instructions to the army, the activities of the Einsatzgruppen would not have been possible, as they had been attached to a specific army group and had therefore moved with it. On the 10th of April 1948, the tribunal found Otto Ohlendorf guilty of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and membership in criminal organizations, and sentenced him to death by hanging. Ohlendorf was 44 years old when he was executed on the 7th of June 1951. Until his very end, he claimed that he had acted properly and had done nothing wrong. There were no tears shed for Otto Ohlendorf.
Thanks for watching the World History channel, and don't miss our next videos. Click the subscribe button now for more interesting clips. Give us a like, and see you in the following episode.